he's like the Bruce Lee ideal of being water, right? He just like mostly ice cubes, right? Very clunky but there is no form really that he follows.
All right, welcome to another episode of Two Fight Fans, where we talk about all things in combat sports. I am one fight fan, Colin.
I'm the other Stewart.
All right, so today we're not making our picks yet, but we are going to kind of dive in to the main event for this weekend's card, UFC 305.
Yeah, this feels like this finally feels like a real huge crossroads for the middleweight division. What happens in the main event between Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya is kind of the future of the middleweight division. Will it continue to be a division filled with donkey brains, yet ruled by one or two spectacular fighters, a la Anderson Silva on his run, or Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold when they dominated the division? Or, as it has been for the past year and a half, will it go and be owned by the people of the middleweight division? Will it be the people's division in which the lowly donkey-brained fighter can rise and ascend to kinghood? That's really what this is about. This is, can that preternatural athlete, Israel Adesanya, kind of reclaim and say, no, this division is meant to be ruled by your betters? Or will Dricus fight for the people and say, actually, this division is for low-skilled, low-information fighters, and so I am fighting for all of them? But actually, that's kind of wrong, because in my extensive research, in which I nearly lost my mind 4 or 5 times, I have discovered that Dricus du Plessis actually might have the least amount of donkey brains of anyone in this division.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you were talking this weekend about it, so
Yeah. So before we dive in, I think what we need to do is we need to quickly set some vocabulary down so that we
okay.
know what we're talking about. And the
Sure.
three vocabulary words that I kind of want to parse out is mechanic, or mechanics,
Okay.
technique, and strategy.
Okay, mechanics, technique, and strategy.
Yes.
Tell me the difference between mechanics and
Okay.
technique then.
Very quick. Mechanic is when someone extends their arm to punch, right? Are they punching solely with their arm? Are they pivoting their hips as they throw? Are they rotating their wrist correctly so that they're striking with the front 2 knuckles? Are they ensuring that their fist is closed entirely with their thumb wrapped properly? When they finish that punch, does that punch return on the same trajectory that it left and return to guard, right? Mechanically, how pretty is your, think of it like a golf swing, right? You can have a janky looking golf swing, but there's a right mechanic to use in your golf swing. Same thing with punching, right? You don't want to have a punch that starts high and drops weirdly and pause. You want to make sure that it's nice and tight right off the shoulder. You're not punching up, you're not punching down. Your feet are in the proper position. That is the mechanics of a punch, right?
Okay.
Technique would be anything that is related to a very short term or very condensed set of mechanics for something. So a spinning back kick is the technique, right? Are you throwing that spinning back kick with your eyes closed, pointing your big toe directly at your target, and then lifting your foot entirely, your standing foot entirely off the ground as your arms spread eagle out? That's not good mechanics, but that is still the technique you are employing, right?
Okay. So the actual striking that you
Yes.
throw.
Yes.
Okay. That
And
adversity of strikes you throw.
exactly. And
Got it. Okay.
buried within technique, which you may need to find another word for, maybe implementation, is right. There is a right time to throw a spinning back kick. Max Holloway does it perfectly. It's anytime somebody who is out of range is trying to close the distance, and so they run directly into that rear kick, right?
Okay.
So having the right implementation, choosing the right technique for the right implementation,
Okay.
which leads
Okay.
us to the very highest level, which is strategy. You look at your opponent and you go, what do I need to do to beat them? And then how well can you actually go about doing that? So, for instance, one thing that Dricus du Plessis did when he fought Robert Whitaker is he said, I see that Robert Whitaker struggles with the southpaw jab. I will go southpaw, and I will continuously throw that jab whenever I get the chance because I know it'll eventually hit Robert Whitaker. And at the very end of the first round, what happened? Robert Whitaker kind of ran into a pretty mechanically unsound southpaw jab and then got dropped. But it was the right, like, high level thinking of what Dricus du Plessis needed to do. So
Okay.
we've got mechanics, we have techniques, and then we have strategy.
Okay.
So let's go through. Israel Adesanya, do you think he's probably mechanically one of the best fighters above 175 pounds or 170 pounds?
Above 170. Well, based on your definition of mechanics, I think there are times where some of his strikes are some of the cleaner and sharper. I think if I understand what you're defining
Yeah.
as mechanics, like there are times where he throws a jab and it is like straight out and back. There are times where he'll throw like a hook from the right angle, and coming in from
Mm-hmm.
a blind angle where you can't see it. Or
Mm-hmm.
counter. Oh, well, that's more technique then. So yeah, there are times where he does it, but there are also times where because he is so athletic, he can throw strikes that aren't necessarily mechanically standard. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is not how you normally teach a type of punch, but because he has the athleticism and I guess the fight IQ to throw them, he can throw them and hit him from that angle. So I'd say he's a little bit of both because he's both orthodox and unorthodox in his striking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
I think so, right? Like I
Okay.
think
Okay.
he is pretty mechanically sound, but he's not so wedded to the proper mechanics that it doesn't allow him to improvise or implement kind of unorthodox techniques when
Yes.
he needs them, right?
Yeah.
I would then argue not only is Israel Adesanya probably the most mechanically sound fighter at 185, but that Dricus du Plessis has some of the worst mechanics of anyone in the middleweight division.
Okay.
It's shocking how he throws these things.
Yes.
It's truly baffling. Um, so yeah, I like we got to get that out of the way. We've got those definitions out of the way. So let's quickly start with like Izzy and talk about uh what are his big weapons that we know that he has? How does he lose fights or why does he lose fights? And like what do we think probably like his benefits are or like all of his kind of like plus game.
Okay.
Let's kind of just do a breakdown of Izzy. Um so you tell me, what are the things that impress you most about Izzy? From a mechanics, technique, strategy, whatever side of a fight.
Yeah. Okay. So Izzy reminds me a lot of Anderson Silva, and we've made the comparisons before. They've had kind of a passing of guard when they actually fought each other, and it's this. Izzy has an ability to see what his opponent is doing and basically formulate a counter punching or counter striking strategy to take advantage of that. He is basically the definition of a counter puncher, and
Mhm.
using his skills and his abilities to basically make someone look entirely amateurish, because he can counter off and just using the opponent's momentum against them to like hit them with a strike that they don't see coming and to cause more damage to them.
Mhm.
Like the Alex Pereira matchup is one of the prime examples. He basically baits him into the same sort of scenario where Alex won the first match,
Mhm.
at the end of the fight. Like kind of backing up in the cage, hitting to the body, jumping in with a knee, things like that. So you know, as Izzy is kind of baiting him in, he kind of shelling up. He's able to see when he's opened, and he fires off a couple of strikes that Alex can't see coming. And it
Mhm.
stuns him first, and then he follows up with the exact same strikes to knock him out cold. So in that scenario, he has everyone fooled and thinking that he's in trouble again or he's really hurt, but then he's
Mhm.
able to counter with a strike that no one sees coming, and it's from an angle that no one can see or no one can expect, and no one can really and Alex can't really defend against. So I think that is the ability that he has. Um, I think another one of his positives or things is his ability to absorb some punishment, because he did those were big shots that he took from Alex that he had to
Yeah.
like brave against. I know against Robert Whitaker, he took a lot of big shots against in the what I think the first fight, even though he won
No,
by
I think it was the second fight because the first fight he barely got touched.
okay. Oh, okay. Well, then it's also Kelvin Gastelum that he had this back and
Yeah,
forth
that was a
with,
big
right?
one.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think in talking about him, he has these abilities to one absorb strikes, which is
Mhm.
necessary to figure out, the reads or get the counter going. And it's
Mhm.
also to lull people into a false sense of security, like they have this, and that's when he's really dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, and building off of that, right, it is a counter-striking game, and the counter-striking game is kind of predicated off of he has such a variety of feints. He has a lot of techniques
Mhm.
that he employs to feint people so that they bite on a feint, um, and open themselves up in a way. And usually his biggest success is when somebody really makes a big movement, right, to like shy away from the feint, or they entirely shell up. And then he can, like, I think of the Paulo Costa fight, right? Where Paulo Costa just every feint seemed to like scare him into like being paralyzed.
Mhm.
And then Izzy employed, I think, what is his most vital technique in his game, and it seems to be something that almost all of his strategy that he uses in a fight relies on, which is leg kicking. He
Mm.
loves leg kicking. He leg kicks constantly,
Yeah.
and we've seen him struggle in the past. I'm thinking of the Jan Blachowicz fight. Jan Blachowicz started checking those kicks, and same with Pereira. Pereira checked those kicks quite well,
Yeah.
and it really actually shuts down the variety of techniques that Izzy. Like it's almost like leg kicks are almost like a jab for him. Like all of his combinations are kind of built off of leg kicking.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so if you're not going to do what Robert Whitaker did in the first fight, which is like lunge in dramatically, which perfectly sets up a counter for Izzy, he can't proactively start setting up his counters without those kicks.
Mhm.
Which is one of the reasons why he lost in the Sean Strickland fight, because Sean Strickland routinely was checking his kicks in the first 2 rounds, and Izzy stopped kicking then. And then it
Mm.
became this weird battle of Izzy would feint, and sometimes Sean Strickland would do something, but Sean Strickland's entire game is like little tiny swats at the hands to try to just slightly move the punches out of the way or slightly take the sting off of it, and then come back with just a pretty like quick snapping, not very powerful jab. And so Izzy couldn't really get into the counter striking battle because there was no strikes to really counter. It's extremely hard to counter the jab, and every time he would feint or throw himself, his hand would get swatted away, and Izzy doesn't
Mhm.
really like that. What do you think of Izzy's combination punching? Because I think that's one of the things that I was in thinking about this. Like, I don't see a lot of combination punching from Izzy.
Yeah, so, okay, what do you consider a combination? Like, is it more than 3 strikes? Is it diversity of upper body, lower body?
I'd probably say like, I, I think 2 strikes is enough,
Okay.
but something in which there isn't like a full beat of rhythm in between your strikes, right? I will give you that Izzy will like throw a leg kick, set back, reset, and then pop a jab out. But it's not like it's kick jab like quickly, right? It's
Right.
like he kicks, then he recognizes, hey, I can put in one more punch here. I'll throw that in. As opposed to throwing the jab with the intention of like, hey, the 2 is coming right behind the 1, right? Like I know I'm gonna have a throwaway shot or a shot that might hit, but then the second strike or the third strike will be the one that hits.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Okay, okay. In my mind, he has a few instances of that, like,
Mhm.
against Alex Pereira when he knocked him out, but
Mhm.
he mostly relies on kind of waiting on one big strike,
Mhm.
like kind of like you said before, like he's one of those fighters who definitely indexes. He like puts his hand out and then
Mhm.
wait for them to hit the exact range where they drop their guard in the exact way, and then fire off like one big shot.
Mhm.
Whether that's the straight right or something like that,
Mhm.
and he has the ability to throw combinations, which would open up more targeting for him.
Mhm.
It kind of like setting up the counter itself rather than
Mhm.
just waiting for the right situation. But I think yeah, he definitely has maybe fallen into a habit more of waiting in on one strike like that.
Yeah. which I think it really shows up because much like Anderson Silva, it's a very apt comparison. He has had a couple of like staring contest stinkers
Yeah.
in his time as the champion. I'm thinking especially of that Yoel Romero
Yep.
fight, and it's kind of you think about it and you go like, well, why? Why would a striker who has we know he was able to knock out Alex Pereira and Paulo Costa and Robert Whitaker, like he can hit hard. Uh, he's very durable.
Mhm.
He can take a lot of damage. And someone who is a feinting counter striker who throws kicks a lot, why did this suddenly become a fight in which nothing really happened? Right?
Yeah.
Like why didn't he throw? And I think we have to talk about his uncomfortableness with either a lack of like anything to play off of, right? Like he's basically if this was like doing comedy or something, it's like playing to an empty room. Like he can't do it. Like he can't do it. He needs to get feedback from the opponent.
Mhm.
Um, and Yo Romero just like didn't do that. And that was kind of the same thing with Sean Strickland. Like even though Sean Strickland was like more active in the fight, it when Izzy would feint, it like never elicited a different reaction. It was always just swat the hands or like lift his leg to check. And then he only ever threw jabs, and so there was nothing else for like Izzy to bait out or do anything with.
Right.
Um, and Also, it seems that there is a kind of a weird fear within Izzy of being countered himself, right? When Yoel Romero would just stand there and not do anything, Izzy doesn't like having to take the initiative a
Mhm.
lot of the time, especially if you're not biting on feints, right? He was able to take the initiative from Paulo Costa because Paulo Costa just kept like flinching and like covering his face anytime Izzy would feint. And so Izzy could move in on him. But Yoel Romero just stood there, kind of like glassy eyed, staring at him. And
Yeah.
so Izzy was like, I hate this. I don't want to. I'm scared of being countered because I know how to counter people.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there seems to be some weird psychological kind of thing that Izzy has, where he doesn't like he if you're just gonna stand there and pretend like you're gonna counter him, it kind of freaks him out a little bit. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I think
and-
that's like the prototypical counter striker then, because
yep,
it is like it going to like our weird analogies. Like his is a very much like a coding thing. Like if opponent throws X,
yeah,
blow him up. You know,
yeah,
like but like
yeah,
if you can't get anyone to do the if statement, you've got
hmm
nothing afterwards. You know, so
yep,
someone who does just stand there, a la Yo Romero, and not respond. You know, and
hmm
I don't think it was necessarily because Yo Romero like was just so, like could see through all of it. I think he was just like, "Hey, I'm willing." He was kind of also like Izzy, except his was I'm willing to take a strike. I'm willing to take a jab. I'm willing to take a leg kick if I can just step in and throw my giant cannon of an arm. You know, if I get
hmm
that opportunity, fine, I'll take anything. And that's
yeah,
all he was sitting on the whole time.
hmm
And I think Izzy kind of sensed that or saw that, but
hmm
he couldn't formulate a strategy around that either.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like I really do think I don't mean that he's like scared of Yo Romero in the sense of like,
Mhm.
ooh, I don't want to fight him. He obviously signed the contract, got in there, fought him. I just mean like there is a weird. You sometimes see fighters who like get scared or like kind of mentally defeat themselves. They work themselves up and kind of
Mm.
mentally defeat themselves when things don't go right, right?
Okay.
Or like when it isn't going exactly their way,
Yeah.
or not in a way that they can compute, right? We have to give him props for coming back and beating Alex Pereira after losing to him 3 times. But it seemed like in his mind he could go like, I know I can beat him. I just need to have the courage in that moment to like bait him in. And then what happened was he threw a four punch combination, which is something he doesn't normally do. Right. But it was like clear that he had like kind of psyched himself up to be like, I have to throw 4 punches at Alex Pereira when I'm along the cage. Like
Mhm.
that's the time to catch him. And so he was able to do it. But when it was Sean Strickland, when he's like he seemed so mentally just like I don't want to be in here. Like this guy just keeps walking at me and throwing these little jabs, and there's nothing I can do to like stop it because he's not really doing anything.
Mhm.
Or Yoel Romero, he's like this guy's just not doing anything, and so he almost like kind of like his mind drifts out of the fight, and he's like, well, I'm not gonna fight then. He has kind of a weird psychology that way. It seems like. Okay, so we've got Izzy, right? Like we've got uh We've got a guy with good leg kicks. He feints. He's got unorthodox punches, but really good punching technique. He can bait people in, relies on feints, and is like a classical counterpuncher.
Yeah.
How do we beat? What's the game plan for beating Izzy? If you're just like any fighter, what are like the 3 or 4 things that you have to do to beat Izzy? Because we've seen it happen, and so we should be able to like kind of patently like write a game plan for anyone.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay.
So
So
what are a couple of things you think of?
okay. So couple of things. One, and this is kind of more theoretical because I don't think we've
Okay.
really seen it before. It reminds me a lot. Again, reminds me a lot of Anderson Silva.
Mm-hmm.
Someone being able to take down Izzy
Mm-hmm.
and control on top.
Yep.
Because we haven't seen Izzy fight off his back. He is by trade a kickboxer,
Mm-hmm.
so and even though he's got really long limbs and can, utilize them, for great submissions like someone like Charles Oliveira, I don't think he actually has the skill or the training to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Those aren't any techniques that he can like actually employ, like in a dangerous.
Correct. And
Yeah.
maybe he's developed them a little bit more, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Thus far, he has not shown a submission propensity or
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. And the few times that he has been taken down, which was in the Jan Blachowicz fight, I think there were 3 or 4 takedowns he gave up. There was a lot of control time where Jan Blachowicz just kind of sat in his guard
Yeah,
and kept trying to advance, and Izzy didn't have much
to
offense.
neutralize. Yeah,
Yeah, off
yeah.
his back. Yep.
That was going to be my second thing. Be bigger. Um,
Yeah.
Someone who is bigger, and the Jan Blachowicz was obvious. Like, one, he went up in weight, but it was just like, that's kind of obvious. But we've seen that he does tend to have a little bit of issue with some people who can bully him that way.
Mhm.
Yoel Romero, things like that. So that is one thing. Now those are all kind of like things you can't control. So in terms of actual like strategy and striking,
I think the takedowns is one thing,
okay, the
right?
takedown,
Like,
that's
you can
fair.
control that, and I think what's good to note is Izzy has really good if you, like, shoot in again along the fence against him, like Derek
Mhm,
Brunson did that, a lot of fighters have done that, especially early on his rise to the title.
mhm.
Izzy is very good takedown defense against the cage.
Yes. Yeah.
It's out in open space where he really struggles, which will
Yeah.
come up in the Dricus du Plessis fight because Dricus, even though he has the most wacky, terrible mechanics, bad technique takedowns, he usually gets them in the open, and he routinely gets everyone down that he fights.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
actually, I do want to point out another positive thing
Mhm.
for Izzy, which is
Mhm.
kind of unique to him, is he doesn't mind fighting backwards
Yep.
and doesn't mind fighting against the cage that way. Like, where
Mhm.
not necessarily where he's pinned against the cage, but where like a striking match can happen where he quote unquote doesn't have anywhere to go. So that the
Mhm.
only thing that like creates a very like enticing target to just move in on, which plays right
Mhm.
into his game there. So
Yeah. Because he has good footwork, he can make sure that he stays off the cage. But we did see that when somebody has no footwork to speak of, like Sean Strickland, right? He
mhm,
doesn't like stay in a stance. He just walks forward, which is always easier than maintaining a stance. Izzy's footwork kind of he loses the ability to uh, skate away from being cut off, right? He kind of relies on somebody else having a stance as well,
mhm,
and then as soon as you break that to like cut him off and walk forward, he can struggle to like keep up with that foot speed.
mhm.
But everyone would. That's not like a huge thing, and only Sean Strickland has Sean Strickland's wacky just walk heel to toe footwork.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna take Izzy down. We're
you
gonna
can
try
take
to
him
be
down.
bigger than him. What else are we gonna do?
Another thing that I think would be useful is attacking the legs or attacking the body. You
Mhm.
know, but both of them pose really dangerous like proposals. Like, again, this is something where you would just have to be brave to do, kind of like what Izzy has done.
Mhm.
Attacking the legs, because he has such long legs, you can help neutralize some of that footwork. You
Mhm.
can help cut some of the range that he has.
Mhm.
The problem with that is just attacking the legs, leaves you potentially open for other counter striking.
Mhm.
And because he is a kickboxer, so like you're basically hoping to go blow for blow in that. And same thing with the body attacking the body. It can leave you really open. Either just lunging in for like a
Mhm.
jab or straight to the body. It can leave you really open for him to get his read and to counter you off of that if you don't follow it up.
Mhm.
But also following it up can also lead you in for more because now if you're tipping forward or falling into that trap, then again, you're playing into Izzy's game. So these are things that like soften him up, not necessarily to win the match. So I would say utilizing, you know, leg kicks, attacking the body,
Attritional damage.
yes, to maybe get something where you can take him to the ground and then rough him up some more there.
Yeah, and I would say even with when it comes to leg kicking or leg kicking with him, I actually don't think you need to leg kick with Izzy. One of the big things, like we said, was he relies so much on his own leg kicks to set up the rest of his combination and the rest of his techniques. Like his whole
Mhm,
game is built off of that. When he fought Sean Strickland, when he fought Alex Pereira, and his output really went down and he lost, and Jan Blachowicz, all of them were able to routinely check his leg kicks.
mhm,
And that was enough to kind of neutralize his kicking game. I assume because it hurts. Like, I mean, it hurts both of you, but we've seen, at least with Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira, their legs are made of adamantium, right? Like, you kick their leg and you're like, fuck, my leg hurts a lot when they check it.
mhm.
And that shut down the game. And then even Sean Strickland, who I don't think of as having like great, unique leg kicking ability or leg kick checking ability. He was able to check kicks, and then Izzy just stopped throwing kicks basically after round two in their fight. So just being able to check the leg kicks so that it takes away that sort of entry point for Izzy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to check his leg kicks. We're going to take him down. We're going to be bigger, and we're going to try to do attritional damage.
Yes.
Oh boy, do I have a fighter for you. Dricus 2 plus C, baby.
Okay.
So let's talk about him. Let me first give you my thesis of Dricus Duplessis.
Please, I've been ever
Yeah.
since you texted me this over the weekend. I've
hmm
been dying to hear about this. I've been on
hmm
just thinking, what does Stu have in store for us today?
Imagine you have trained a fighter orthodox, right? He's very good with his lead hand jab. He's very good where his left hand jab. His right hand is where most of his power comes from. He's very used to being defensive off the right hand side in an orthodox position. Suddenly, something happens, and he is forced to fight southpaw.
Okay.
What happens to fighters when they have to fight in like a a a, a stance that they are totally not accustomed to? What are the things that kind of fall away, or like what are the big like issues that immediately kind of come up for fighters?
Immediately stance, like loss
Yeah.
of balance in stance,
hmm
therefore loss in footwork or coordination in footwork. Weirdly, just generally speaking, loss of punching power,
hmm
but maybe like a weird increase in punching power of a jab because
hmm
it's their power hand and they're just more coordinated and like used to it. But
hmm
it's also not like a fast jab. Like
Yeah.
it's very much telegraphed because again, lack of coordination or experience fighting from your non-dominant side.
Great. So you're saying that if I take you from orthodox to southpaw, probably your coordination is not going to be as clean. Your footwork will kind of go away. You might have a little bit more power in strange positions, but you're just not going to be as fleet of foot or like probably as defensively sound,
Correct,
right?
correct.
Now, what if in my orthodox stance I had no footwork and I was not fleet of foot and my technique was janky as well, so that when I switched, it was almost as if nothing had changed? That is what Dricus du Plessis, that is one of the things that Dricus du Plessis has, is
So
in orthodox and in southpaw. He is just as janky from both positions, and so any success he has in one stance, he can immediately replicate in the opposing stance. It's a truly baffling thing to watch. You go
you're
back and watch the tape in orthodox, and he is throwing weird, slow jabs that have strange power. He is like moving around with really bad footwork, but is able to skate in and out of position. And then suddenly, when he decides, for the first time in his professional career, I'm going to fight Southpaw against Robert Whitaker, someone who is 9 times better than anyone else I've ever fought, he suddenly looks exactly the same. So much so that I didn't even realize he was a Southpaw until he brought it up in the post-fight interview. And I went, oh my God, he was fighting Southpaw. That's crazy. Um, so that's one of the first things that I have to give to Dricus du Plessis. No matter where you put him, no matter what stance he's fighting out of, no matter kind of like where he finds himself. He is equally effective everywhere because he has nothing. He has no A game really to fall back on. He has no like, this is my ideal stance. This is my ideal way of fighting. He's like, wherever you need me, I will fight there. Um,
So you're saying he is basically an untrained switch hitter, where he
yeah.
just it's universally like undeveloped,
hmm
but it's just all kind of at least it's all the same.
Yeah. How can you remove technique from that which has no technique? You know what I mean? Like it's pretty baffling. So that's one is uh whatever stance he fights out of or whatever is going on, you actually aren't necessarily taking away his stance from him or his like A game from him because Dricus du Plessis can kind of fight anywhere, which is a very strange thing to kind of like see. The second thing is, why does someone stop kicking when someone checks a leg kick?
Wait, why does someone stop kicking?
Yeah, so I'm kicking, I'm leg kicking,
Okay.
and you keep checking my kicks. Why would I stop kicking then?
Either A, it hurts too much to do it, or B, you realize this isn't working. I got to think of something else.
Exactly. It's not working, and so I must think of something else. What if I told you there was a who went, I'm going to throw leg kicks for 5 rounds against Sean Strickland. And despite the fact that I get into double digit leg kicks and every one of them is checked, I'm just going to keep throwing them until the person stops checking because they're like, I can't just keep checking these things. He's supposed to stop. Dricus du Plessis is indefatigable when it comes to his techniques, regardless of whether they work or not. He gets in his mind, I'm going to throw leg kicks against Sean Strickland. And he threw like 2 or 3x more leg kicks than Israel Adesanya against Sean Strickland. And despite the fact that they all got checked, you could see that it was beginning to sting and hurt Sean Strickland. And Dricus, it looked like it probably was hurting him, but he didn't care. He was like, this is what I have to do to win the fight. And so I'm going to just keep doing it.
Mhm.
Like he cannot be deterred, it seems. Even if he's been shown 500 times in a fight that the technique he is using is not having an effect on his opponent, he's like, that's fine. I'll just keep throwing it. And he just keeps doing that shit. Which I think for a fighter like Izzy might be a little weird to fight against because Izzy is like, I check your kick. You're supposed to stop now. He has a very kind of like classic brain, I think, when it comes to like, hey, I counter your jab. That'll stop you from jabbing. Dricus du Plessis will be like, I'm going to keep throwing this jab 900 times. Fuck you. And like, he doesn't get tired about his techniques. Like, he'll just keep throwing them. So he is someone who, whatever stance he is in, is not deterred and will keep throwing techniques, right? Rather than going like, I have a really good rear leg roundhouse kick to the body, but my left side is a little bit weaker when I do it. He's like, I'm going to throw it both sides, full power, the same way. Like, I don't care.
Mhm.
And he won't be deterred if he catches your elbow 900 times when throwing that body kick. He'll just keep doing it.
Mhm.
And one thing that he does, especially in the Sean Strickland fight, is he is someone who doesn't really have a good idea of what techniques are working or not. And so he will throw so many variations of technique throughout the fight. But once he finds one that actually does work, he will. It's not like he goes, okay, here comes a leg kick, then here comes a spinning elbow, then here comes a rear punch, then here comes a left hook. If that spinning elbow hits you, he will now start throwing that spinning elbow like every other strike. He immediately is like, got it. This is the thing that's going to work. And so I'm going to keep hitting you with that. It was
Mhm.
kind of like the jab, the southpaw jab against Robert Whitaker. Once he started making contact with that, that became like the strike that he threw before every other strike in his fight until it eventually broke through. Right? He's extremely dogged about like sticking to the things that in the fight are working.
Mhm.
So in a way, he has sort of what we had talked about with Bilal Muhammad, right? He is a winner. He finds a way to win and he does not stop, right? Robert Whitaker has said that one of the things that he underestimated about Dricus du Plessis was like he was catching him with a lot of things, or he was countering things, or he was kind of doing techniques that he had seen against Marvin Vettori or Kevin Gastelum made them feel kind of silly, right? He would catch them with a high kick or he'd catch them with a jab. and they would kind of shrink away in the normal way a sparring partner would. Like, ooh, I need to watch out for that jab. And Dricus just didn't have that reaction.
Mhm.
And Robert Whitaker said, like, in a way, Robert Whitaker said, like, he could really feel in the cage that Dricus wanted it more than Robert Whitaker did. Like, which is a weird thing to hear a fighter say. It's like somebody in the cage, like, wanted it more than me. Because that's usually the
Right.
one thing that it's usually I wanted it just as much, but the technique or like I got tired, it's never they wanted it more.
Like their willpower was stronger.
Yeah. And so, like kind of like how we talked about with Bilal Muhammad, like he will get his game plan and then stick to it, and that's exactly what he did against Leon Edwards, right? He found the perfect game plan. He's like, I just have to keep doing this. That's kind of how Dricus du Plessis fights. I don't know. He doesn't have the mechanics of Bilal Muhammad, nor does he have like a bunch of techniques employed smartly. But he does have good broad strategy. He said, like, coming into the Sean Strickland fight, he knew that he was going to have to eat 2 or 3 jabs, but that when he started punching with Sean Strickland, since Sean Strickland tries to block everything with his hands and swat it away,
Mhm.
that he would probably have 2 or 3 punches swatted away, but then if he just kept throwing after a second or third punch, he would most likely catch Sean Strickland. And he did that. Even after he kept routinely eating jabs to the face. He just was like, this is the thing that my coaches told me I have to do. Every combination has to be 3 punches or more. And he would routinely lose or like not hit the first 2 punches, but then that third or fourth punch would make contact, which for most fighters would be extremely demoralizing. But
Mhm.
if you have donkey brains, you don't get demoralized. So it's Dricus du Plessis doesn't have the well-schooled mechanics or the really like thoughtful, interesting way of doing it, but he has very good broad strokes approaches to fighting. And all of the things that you would say, okay, well, if I'm fighting someone who's a really strong athlete, oh, that's another thing we have to say. Dricus du Plessis is a giant monster, man. He's
Yeah.
huge.
He is very big.
Yeah, like he routinely he in the Brad Tavares fight, he grabs him and he goes for a lateral drop, where you like lean back and you try to like almost kind of chuck the person by you.
Mhm.
And Dricus du Plessis fell like a board straight back onto his back and just pulled Brad Tavares on top of him. It was like the stupidest looking thing I've ever seen. He like fell back and like bonked his head off the mat. But that didn't stop him from going for a lateral drop again in that fight. Right? Most fighters, I would, if this happened to me, I would do it. Would do that and go like, "Oh, what an idiot I am! I'm definitely not going to do that again." And he just like kept doing it. He went for a head and arm throw against Robert Whitaker, and their legs like tied up, and they both fell in kind of a neutral position. Right? He didn't like execute the technique well. He didn't get the position, but as soon as he landed, Robert Whitaker seemed to go like, okay, well, he didn't get on top of me. And Dricus du Plessis, in like the weirdest looking scramble I've ever seen, kind of like on the ground lumbering. I don't even know how you describe it, but like lumbered on top of Robert Whitaker suddenly at the end of that round. It was just so bizarre. There seems to be no like, oh shit, that technique didn't work. I need to recover position. He was just like, oh, perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. I'm just going to move on. It's truly bizarre to watch him fight. But after the fact, he does bring thoughtful like ideas. He said like Robert Whitaker was going to outspeed me. I needed to catch him with the southpaw jab, so we fought southpaw. I knew if I could weather the jab, I'd probably get the chance to tie up with him and tire him out a little bit later. And I knew I couldn't because Robert Whitaker is very good takedown defense for lower body takedowns, but not upper body takedowns. And Dricus du Plessis had seen that and said I was going to go for upper body takedowns against Robert Whitaker. Very thoughtful, right? His execution of all those techniques, not very good, right? The actual mechanics of it, not very good, but he did it. Same thing with Sean Strickland, right? Like he ate a bunch of jabs, but he's like, I know I need to do that, and that's fine. And I know I need to keep kicking his legs to slow him down because he will always be better with Sean Strickland will just walking. He's not within a stance. And even though he was getting leg kick checked to death, he just kept kicking.
Mhm.
So Dricus du Plessis is a winner who, because he's like the Bruce Lee ideal of being water, right? He just like mostly ice cubes, right? Very clunky, but there is no form really that he follows. And so it allows him to kind of always find the right solution. Um, it's a very strange thing to see. So that's my take. That's my thesis on Dricus du Plessis.
I like it. I like it. That was good. That was very
He's
good.
he's in
So
yeah, yeah.
so
So
I have some questions posed to you now.
yeah.
Okay. So as someone you've just said that one of the keys to beating Izzy is to just check his leg kicks, which
Mhm.
basically you just do brainlessly. Just do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we have not really based on your summary there, we have not really seen DDP like checking kicks per se, but we have seen the resiliency of just like keep doing the same thing
Yeah.
in that. But he likes to go for kicks himself.
Yeah.
So how will that play disrupting Izzy's rhythm of like a kicker primarily? You know?
I think this is the $1,000,000 question of this fight.
Okay.
Dricus
Okay.
Dricus du Plessis routinely, when retreating or when moving, will bring his feet entirely together. He does that weird thing where he'll stand and it kind of looks like he doesn't know how to stand properly, right? He looks like a bunch of raccoons in a trench coat trying to pretend to be a human. But when he wants to move, right, like L stepping, you're supposed to do it like really quickly, right? You bring your front foot to your back foot and then step your back foot out to the side, right? And you do that quickly because you want to change directions quickly so you're not a target, but you also don't want to be standing in front of your opponent with both of your feet like right next to each other.
Right.
Dricus du Plessis will spend like a full fucking second or two with his feet completely together in his stance. He'll just stand there, like knock kneed, like a child holding in like a pee that they have to take with his fists up. Like he stands completely like that. So when I see that, I go, Izzy's gonna be able to chew this guy's legs up all day, right? This is going to be the thing that Izzy needs. It's just someone who's going to stand there with the worst stance possible and eat leg kicks routinely. Because, like you said, I've never seen Dricus check leg kicks. But I had never seen Dricus fight Southpaw with a Southpaw jab before. I had never seen Dricus do 10,000 things that he keeps doing in fights. So I don't know if when they come out, Izzy is able to like land his first 2 or 3 leg kicks without any checking or out any disruption. I think that's the perfect tell for like this is going to be Izzy's fight.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
because everything that I've seen on tape of Dricus, all I can think of is like, dude, Izzy is going to like massacre this guy's legs, but
Yeah.
he might come out and, like you said, just mindlessly. He could have just his coaches could have said, and all they could have been training is like, hey man, you just need to check the leg kicks and get a double leg. Check the leg kicks and get a double leg. And he will do that like just on loop, like the Energizer Bunny, without ever slowing down. But I don't know. I don't know because I've never seen it before. But that doesn't mean he can't do it. Because we had never really seen Sean Strickland check leg kicks before he fought Izzy, and then Eric Nixick, his coach, said like that's all they basically practice in camp was different ways of checking kicks and then since he sparred so much, he told his sparring partners like just leg kick him, to try to just get him used to checking leg kicks.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
I don't know, but that's I think that's the major tell in this fight is how
Okay.
well can because if Dricus comes out and has the jankiest leg checking technique I've ever seen, where he like just puts his heel like on the inside of his shin and like balls up and stands on one leg, like he might be able to beat Izzy. I don't know.
Okay. But okay, so second follow-up question to what you were
Yeah,
just talking about,
yeah,
how Dricus du Plessis kind of whether it's him himself in the match or his coaches telling him do this, do this, do this, and he just kind of sticks with that game plan.
mm-hmm.
Do you think that will be enough to overwhelm Izzy? You know, in that Izzy like just like, hey, this keeps working against me. Hey, this keeps like I'm not figuring it out here. Or will that play directly into his hand? It's like, okay, I've got my reads now, and I know what you're gonna do, and I can formulate I have the athleticism to counter it because that is who he is. You know?
Yeah. It's so weird, right? Because yeah, Dricus du Plessis when he throws his punches, his footwork is not in line with his punches. His punches come a second before his foot even touches the mat, right? He'll do that like marching step where like he'll step forward with his right leg and throw his left hand, and then
Yeah.
immediately take another. Right? He does it, but he does it with his chin pointed directly at the ceiling, or sometimes with his eyes pointed directly at the mat, not even looking where he's going, and
Yep.
like marching as he punches which is like in my mind right? If you go to any boxing gym or kickboxing gym or anything, they'd be like, "That's terrible technique. You're gonna get countered in a second." The thing that kind of like gives me a slight pause is I think we have this weird revisionist history, or we kind of forget what the narrative was going into that Paulo Costa fight, which is we've seen when Israel Adesanya is pressured and pressured really consistently that he doesn't like that, right? He kind of wilts under pressure, like any classic counter fighter, right? If you just keep coming forward at them, it's kind of what Chris Weidman used against Israel, or not Israel Adesanya, Anderson Silva, right? He kept like consistent pressure. He didn't like overextend, but he kept consistent pressure and was able to get him. That's how Alex Pereira beat Izzy in the first fight. And look, he was very close to beating him in the second fight, but then Izzy, through that combination, he kind of bit down and went, "This is exactly when I need to strike," and he was able to capitalize on it. But we're really interested in that Paulo Costa fight because we're like, here we have like a pressure fighter who is not going to get tired, who's just going to march forward and just like kind of pound into Izzy and not like take him seriously. And Izzy really doesn't like that. Sean Strickland kind of did that, and that's what diffused Izzy. The Paulo Costa fight, though, Paulo Costa didn't do that. He came out there, was afraid of every single feint, and so then Izzy just chewed him to pieces. Dricus du Plessis kind of fights like what Paulo Costa used to fight like. He just has like dumb brain, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to beat you. And so he might be able to, like, in the same way that Sean Strickland kind of psychologically tired Izzy out in that fight, Dricus du Plessis might be able to do that. Or I think, like you're alluding to, he'll do that dumb marching punches, and Izzy will just step back and go like, "And I'm gonna murk you right here, right? Your chin's right there. I'm gonna hit you." But Robert Whittaker should have been able to do that. Sean Strickland should have been able to do that. All these other fighters should have been able to do that, and nobody has been able to do it. And so I'm like, what's going on here? And I think, I don't know, right? Because I understand what you're saying. This should be the easiest Israel Adesanya pick ever. This should just be like, he's just going to kick him in the leg. And then as soon as Dricus du Plessis does his like weird tin soldier march forward, he's just going to like step off to the side and then the fight will be done.
Yeah.
And that might happen. That might happen. But also, Dricus du Plessis is this weird enigma who like continuously surprises everyone and beats everyone. And it's through the ways that I think Izzy has a particular like difficulty dealing with. And even though the technique, right, the leg checking is not there, we know that Dricus is bigger, right? He's much bigger and more physical than Israel Adesanya. He does have takedowns, and he consistently gets everyone down that he tries to take down. So he might be able to get down and do top control. And I will say, like, the ground and pound that he had against Robert Whittaker and some of the ground and pound against Sean Strickland was pretty good, right? Or at least it was effective.
Okay.
So that might happen against Izzy. Yeah, I don't know. It's a baffling fight. Yeah. But yeah, so those are the two things. This strikes me very similar. This feels very similar to the Leon Bilal fight in my mind.
Yes.
We have one guy who like is not very heralded. Like he's not. He is big and strong, right? Bilal is like a big, strong dude. But like when you look at it, you go like, your mechanics aren't. Bilal has better mechanics than Dricus. But like the mechanics aren't super there. You're not the dynamic athlete. We haven't seen you like knock people out or really submit people. Like really do a lot of these things that would go, ooh, wow, this is going to be really challenging for Izzy. But at the same time, we've seen that Izzy kind of doesn't like just consistent pressure. Izzy doesn't like, or if there's no consistent pressure, right? If Dricus du Plessis comes out and goes, I'm going to do the Yo Romero like bit for a little while. Like I'm just going to stand there and not do anything, and then I'll see what Izzy thinks of that. Right, we've seen like when the fight begins to not go the way Izzy likes it, he kind of seems to shut down, and we've seen that Dricus du Plessis will just continuously get his face punched and his body kicked, and he could be down 4 rounds, but he will continue to fight with the same intensity and just like keep going forward as if he's going to win, which makes it an interesting fight, I think. So yeah, that's my takeaway of how these two guys fight.
I've got one more question for you.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Kind of what you were just talking about. How does mental state and emotionality play into this? Because, you said before that, Izzy, if things aren't going his way, he kind of wilts in that regard. He doesn't necessarily find a way to change things up to make his game happen. He kind of waits for it to fall into his hands,
Yeah.
And it can be really frustrating when that's when the opponent's not doing what you want them to do, especially
Yeah.
when your whole game is based off of that. So, that's one thing to ask about Izzy, against this kind of matchup.
Mhm.
Also, outside of fight antics and beef there, because this fight definitely has that. And I think Izzy is also an emotional fighter, but can use it in a positive way, not where it could be distracting. And I
Mm.
think that's the form that that's why I was like, when we were talking about this a while ago, I think that's why he's gonna come back to kind of a more a flash of his old form, where he was a more dynamic and aggressive striker.
Yeah, I mean, that could it could totally be the case, and like we said, like, we kinda criticize Izzy for being a little bit of, like, an emotional, like, head case or, like, not keeping his head in the fight against Sean Strickland. How much of that was, like, Sean Strickland, it was supposed to be Dricus, it wasn't supposed to be Sean Strickland. It doesn't sound like Izzy trained or took that fight very seriously,
Mhm,
overall, and that apparently there's a people within that Eugene Behrman camp in New Zealand. They have one guy at that gym who's a coach who his whole deal is just tape study, and he's just, like, very good at, like, bringing up ideas and, like, here's the technique, here's the strategy for tape study, and he had
mhm,
been routinely saying to everyone, like, "Hey, actually, Sean Strickland has a lot of stuff that we need to take very seriously, and, like, it wasn't, uh, uh, treated very seriously when he brought that stuff up, right? And so this probably coming off of a loss, they probably are dialed in, right? I have no idea. But yeah, it's but you kind of revert to bad habits when things don't go the way you want it to go, right?
mhm.
It's hard to, like, say, like, I'm gonna rise to the level of my ambition rather than fall to the level that I've shown before,
Yeah.
when things start going shitty. Dude, I don't know. That's one of the craziest, like, things about this fight is, like, my 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 gut tells me this should be, like you said, a flash of the old Izzy, right? This is the perfect fighter, someone who serves their chin on a plate, someone who has really janky telegraph technique, someone who, like, is not a, like, ultra fast fighter, right? Dricus du Plessis doesn't have crazy hand speed. He doesn't have foot speed at all, right? He just kind of, like, skates around like a newborn giraffe in the ring. Um, Right, so, this is perfect. This is the thing that Izzy is meant to feast on, but then the more you look at Dricus, you have to take seriously. He beat Sean Strickland. He beat Robert Whittaker, the 2 guys that have, like, in this division that have beaten Izzy or given Izzy his hardest test.
Mhm.
Um, and Dricus went through them, and, like, Dricus it did not take a ton of damage in either one of those fights. Um, so there is something going on. I don't know though, right? Like, it's so weird because I can see it both ways and it feels equally plausible. Dricus comes out, he gets leg kicked 30 times, he does his weird marching thing. Izzy does the classic, like, really dramatic lean back and then that left hook that's almost like an uppercut that he knocked out Robert Whittaker with, right? And
Mhm.
then, oh wow, it looks kind of like the Robert Whittaker fight, right? And we go, or the first one, and everyone goes, holy shit, look at this. Or he comes out, Dricus has picked up checking of leg kicks, and then Dricus just continuously pressures Izzy with janky, weird stuff. And we're like, how is he not countering this? What is going on? And we kind of see Izzy wilt. Because I bet you, if you've come up with, hey, we should attack the body, I bet you Dricus will attack the body. Like, for everything else, he does come out with good game plans. Um, yeah, God, it's so fucking weird. It's so weird.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, this is the fight for the future of the division. Do we get Slick Izzy again, or do we have Frankenstein's monster of fighting come out, right? Who just is cobbled together bits and pieces of other techniques. It's weird. It's weird, man.
Mhm.
So give me your prediction. Like, I know we're gonna do full predictions, but we've just talked at length about these two fighters, how they fight, what their weaknesses are. Um, Yeah. We didn't really talk about Dricus's weaknesses. I would say Dricus's weaknesses is he has zero defense to speak of, right? He
Yeah,
like, but he can tank damage really
he does.
well,
He
right?
can, yes.
Yeah, he's extremely durable and he can just eat damage, and it doesn't seem like damage dissuades him from doing whatever he's going to do.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, if you meet a thunderous puncher like Izzy who can knock anyone out in the division, like, that's probably not a good right? Just relying on your chin and durability is probably not the best, but maybe he can tank some of that damage in order to deal damage against Izzy. And
Mhm.
we've seen Izzy go like, "Ooh, I don't like that somebody stood up to my power. That makes me
Yeah.
uncomfortable." But yeah, so we've talked about this. Give me your pick and tell me what you think the fight will look like when it happens.
Okay, so I think that the first round is going to be kind of. I think a lot of it is going to be kind of Dricus kind of just moving forward, kind of lumbering forward, and he's kind of staying on the outside, and kind of like it has the potential to indicate like, oh crap, this is going to be a real stinker of a fight because he's just kind of like moving on the outside, trying to get to the cage, or like kind of just skating on the outskirts and nothing really
Hmm.
landing or nothing really exchanging there. And so I think Dricus will actually win the first round, but by the second or third, I think Izzy will have his reads and he'll start to pick his shots more. And I think by the third or fourth round, I think I'm a huge Izzy fanboy.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna get his title back and knock out Dricus.
Okay. Is there a specific way he knocks him out? Is it a head kick? Is it a hook? Is it like a counter? Is he just marching forward, kind of Alex Pereira style, and being like, I have to just outthrow this guy?
No, I think it's gonna be one of those like he's picking his shots and getting him kind of peppering him up, and then Dricus will do like the same thing. He'll walk in and like throw a strike, and Izzy will like step back and then fire off like a straight shot down the middle to knock him out.
Okay. Okay.
Even
Third or
though
fourth round.
we've never seen Dricus get knocked out that way before. I
Yeah.
have this beautiful image of him like swinging in with this strike and then Izzy stepping back and then just loading a straight punch from like almost like an anime and just knocking him out that way, which would be very fitting for Adesanya. But
Yeah, you weeb. Good lord. All right. And then we'll have 10,000. Have you seen those ones where like they give people Dragon Ball Z hair or whatever? Like they
yeah,
animate the clips. Yeah,
yes,
God, just insufferable. Like just the lamest shit ever. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's interesting that you say that. I feel like we got to talk about how you pick who's going to win the first round in fights. Because you were like, it's definitely going to be Tom Aspinall losing the first round, even though
yeah,
Tom Aspinall only wins first rounds, right?
I
Like, I
know.
was like, how is he going to, right? Dricus du Plessis lost the first round against Sean Strickland pretty decisively. He lost the first 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the round against Robert Whitaker until that like last second knockdown, right as the bell was going. So I think, if anything, Izzy is going to really successfully beat the bejesus out of Dricus du Plessis in the first round, but it's
Okay,
not
okay.
going it's not going to kill Dricus, and that is going to throw the second round. It's going to kind of get into Izzy's head in the second round, and Dricus is going to come back and maybe score a takedown in the second round. Um,
Oh,
right, I think first round goes to Izzy. Second round, it's going to be a Dricus thing, but God, the other thing too is Izzy is putting on weight. He said he wants to try to come in like 10 or 15 pounds heavier than he normally fights. Uh, which even though you're training 10 to 15 pounds heavier, like actually being in the fight, um, having that much extra weight can definitely slow you down and make you more tired later on in the fight, right? Conor McGregor classically realized that when he went up to 170. Like you can't, it's hard to just like fight with a bunch more mass on you. But God, I agree with you. I think in the third round, if Izzy doesn't, if Izzy is not able to knock Dricus out in the third round, I think like Dricus could come back or like something has gone wrong and like Dricus will take a decision off of Izzy. But I agree with you. I do think Izzy will probably knock out Dricus du Plessis in the third round. I think the first round will be Izzy. Second round, it'll look like Dricus, and then third round, Dricus will do something where it might be that he pushes Izzy back to the cage again, but Dricus can be smart, and he might realize when Izzy backs up to the cage, like don't go near him because that's where he killed Alex Pereira.
yeah.
Um, but I could definitely see, yeah, that really bad kind of like marching forward punches, Izzy just stepping off like to the side, like literally just sidestepping it and just cracking him with a right hand over the top or that left hand hook that he got Robert Whitaker with. I'm gonna go third round. Yeah, Izzy TKO.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
But
yeah.
God, like dude. If Dricus wins too, like it'll be shocking, but it actually won't be. Right? It'll be really weird. It'll be
I I will be so upset.
yeah. I won't. I mean, like I think that's another thing too. Is like I emotionally or I like mentally, if I have to believe Izzy will win. because otherwise it kind of like throws my whole world perspective out of order, right? Like the belief that like you should work hard and like hone your craft and that is what leads to success. That this will prove like no, actually not at all. Like there's no point in actually getting better at anything. Because there will always be a Dricus du Plessis lurking who can just win despite not actually honing his craft or getting good at technique. So, like, yeah, I have to believe Izzy wins because otherwise, what's the point of anything? What's the point of trying in life? Because it's just like it just would prove that, like, yeah, why are you training? Oh, you're trying to like get your technique better. Oh, you're trying to like make sure your mechanics are sharp. Wrong. That's incorrect. The answer to life is just to be a big athletic hoss, and that's the way to win. Yeah, that's so yeah. All right, but so both of us, Izzy third round KO TKO.
Yep.
Though man, I really can see it. Like I won't be surprised. It'll feel just like unexpected yet inevitable if Dricus pulls this thing off.
If
Yeah.
Dricus pulls this off, this might be my downward spiral in my 5 year it's my 5 year time. It's coming up. And
Dude,
I
it's
might
middleweight,
need
baby.
to go to a new sport like fucking cricket or something. Like I
Yeah,
don't
man.
know, man.
Middleweight will break your heart, and your brain. Well, all right then. This has been Two Fight Fans podcast, where we talk about the future of the middleweight division. Does it go to technique, perseverance, and skill, or does it go to big man? I don't know. Like, that's kind of the split. Yeah. Well,
When you said Dricus has the least donkey brains, it's true, but his donkey brains are on another level. Now that we've just talked about this whole thing, which I'm going to bring up on Friday whenever we do our picks
yeah.
here.
Yeah. It is crazy, right? Like his donkey brains are so severe that he's kind of circled back to being a genius. Right? He's kind of crazy like a fox, you know what I mean? Like it's nuts. You're like he's got the craziest donkey brains in the world, but it really is like that southpaw thing or like the loss of technique or anything like going like, well, why would you not want to go southpaw? Well, what if I never had any of those deficiencies on either side, right? What if I had no stance to lose? What if I had no defensive responsibility that I actually needed to carry over into a different stance? What if when I threw leg kicks and they were checked, I just went, well, that sucked, but I'm going to keep doing it again, right? Like what if you were just the most stubborn bastard on earth, but not in a conscious way, just in like a I don't know better way. And that's Dricus du Plessis, baby. It's super weird. It's super weird. Yeah. And Izzy has his own donkey brains, but like in a much more like understandable way. You're right. You're like, I'm a dominant champion and I want to like have my perfect technique. And so then when somebody fights this really gross, ugly looking fight, whether it be the Yo Romero staring contest or the Sean Strickland, I'm just going to walk forward and play patty cake with my jab, right? Like you go, well, I don't want to do this. This sucks. Like this isn't right. So I understand that donkey brain, but Dricus is, yeah, what an enigma, man. It's whack. Anyway, so this has been Two Fight Fans podcast talking about the future of the middleweight division. I'm One Fight Fan Stuart.
The other Colin.
And join us later this week on Friday when we make picks for the rest of the card, which pretty a decent card overall. This top fight. I feel like we haven't heard enough. Like this was supposed to be a big fight, but there hasn't been a lot of hype around it that I've seen. Right? It's just like the card just kind of showed up, and I'm like, oh, okay, well here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
we'll
Kai
talk about
France, Steve Ursig, yeah, some good fights. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.